Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Draw Me a Story podcast. I'm your host, Lewis. Today we're going to be covering Mitchell's versus the Machines. It just arrived on Netflix about like 2 weeks ago. It's a really amazing film. We got with us tonight on our very first interview the head of story for Mitchell's and the Machines, Guillermo Martínez. How are you, man?
I'm doing good, man. Doing good. Spanish,
Yeah, you can
English,
do
right?
both. Puedes hacer los dos. You can.
Oh, yeah.
We're,
We flip
we're
flop.
we really
We
are a
flip flop.
Spanglish
We
podcast, so
try.
like, we can do both.
Oh,
We
that's
try our
good.
best.
Oh no, but I'm happy to be here. I'm happy to have talk to people who actually have done animation.
Yes,
And then be able to like talk about like the actual good stuff,
the actual
The
process of it.
nitty gritty.
the nitty gritty. Yeah.
That's so good. That's so good, man. This movie, I heard about this movie for a long time, like when it was just still in just like pre-production stages, and the premise to me was it was so out there, to be honest, because it was just like every time someone would explain it to me, it was just like, oh, it's a feel good, it's a family story, and I was like, okay, and then there's a robot apocalypse, and I'm like, that went somewhere. So, and it was really cool. I was really interested to see what do you guys want to come up with that. And the movie touched so many things. Like, to me, it spoke to me in my upbringing, seeing Katie's story. It spoke to me and about my upbringing, about me going to art school, about me talking to my parents about going to art school. Like,
Yeah.
I think a lot of students resonate with that. And the first question that I wanted to ask was, what were your first impressions when they brought you the story, and what resonated with you?
Well, the first response was very weird because the director, like I had moved to Portland, and I had moved from LA to Portland, and the guy who Mike Rihanna was like, "Hey, do you want to come back down to work on with me on this film?" And I was like, "I just moved, man. I don't want to do this. I don't want to go back down there." But then he pitched me the story, and he had these like Ryan Lang pieces of art for the movie that were like amazing. And then he described it as Little Miss Sunshine meets the Terminator, and I was like, that's a fantastic description.
Oh my god.
And so
Sold.
and,
That's
and
such a
that whole,
good
yeah,
premise.
and when I saw the art, it was just like so, like I just connected with it because it was not like it was not it didn't feel like another generic. I'm not saying that I'm not saying they're generic, but like I'm just saying like it didn't feel like the same thing, and that was really exciting. And so I was like, okay, I'll work with you, and then I think it also just the concept of how specific the family was, like how
Yeah.
like how you have the dad is specifically based on his dad, and how he always tells the story of like his dad would build bathtubs in the forest.
Oh
And
my
he's like,
god.
I just love showering naked in the forest, and and I was like, what a unique character. Yeah. And so like we once he showed me all the characters, I was like in love with it. And so that's kind of like how I started in this thing. Like I was working from Portland in the beginning because I just didn't want to, like, it was a risky move because like I wasn't sure. Like I was like, I don't know if I should go down there. Like it's like the movie's not fully greenlit, so I don't know. But
Oh yeah, it was risky.
yeah, it was risky, but then eventually, like I worked. I boarded on the movie first before becoming a head of story. He told me, "Oh, there's this guy who's gonna be a head of story," and I was a huge fan of the guy, and I was like, "Oh my god, yes, I want to work with this guy." And then later on, he was like, "Hey, the guy can't make it, so do you want to be the head of story of the movie?" And I was like, "Oh, okay, yeah, sure."
Sure.
That and then automatically I had to go down there just because it was like I was supervising a team. But yeah, that's kind of like the short version of the encounter.
That's so cool. And that really brings me to my next question, which was like being like becoming head of story, like what really changed from your usual job as a story artist in a team? What really changed for you?
Um, it I think I don't know. It's interesting because like the people that we hired were all like very good friends of mine. So the dynamic was very different from what I was expecting, which was like, oh, it's gonna be like me like just with a whip, just hitting a bunch of people in the back.
Draw
Yeah, draw, make more boards, keep
more
them rougher.
perspective
Yeah,
lines.
yeah. But it was also like educational because like I it was how to teach a bunch of people how to like basically do like something where it feels like it's just said by one person, but at the same time allowing everyone to have authorship and ownership of their own scenes. It's just like it was that was like the biggest balance of working with the story team, and I just lucked out with the story team that I had because they're all passionate about animation, and they also knew what we were trying to do with the film. Like they were all like, yeah, let's do something fucking different. And so like it's can we curse? We can curse here, right?
Yeah,
No?
Yeah, we
sure.
can curse.
It's a podcast. Of course you can.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, that's right. I forgot. um so like that was very exciting to kind of like for everyone, especially okay, so like it was my first time being head of story. It was the first time directing for Mike Rianda. It was the first time producing for the producer Kurt. Like it was the first time for everyone, and there was this sort of almost like ignorance about like let's just fucking do it. Let's
Are
just
we
find
doing
out.
this
What's
right?
crazy? Yeah, can we? Yeah, yeah. Like it's like, are we doing this right? And if we aren't, who cares? Let's just go. And so, the same thing happened with the story team where they were like in the same boat of like, let's como se dice en español, como primero, es mejor pedir perdón que pedir permiso. And so that was our attitude throughout the whole movie, and I think it shows, but I don't know.
Yeah,
Oh,
like
it shows. It shows.
it's really interesting because like my first impression seeing the movie was that it felt like an or by artists for artists. Like
Yeah.
it was it you could feel kind of like the freedom that you guys had in order to do whatever you wanted. And at the
Yeah,
same
like
time, even though they you can anyone can watch and can enjoy it, I feel like people that study art, people that go through these issues that Katie was going through can really feel it. Like I was like 10 minutes into the movie and I'm already crying. Like what?
yeah, that's a question that I had also. Like, I noticed that a lot of the way that you guys carried out the story like bled into our real world, like mentioning Photoshop and stuff like that. And I was wondering, like, was it hard to get those permissions? Like, was there a lot of freedom in the story telling process? Like, did you just show up one day and you were like, I need a Furby right here,
Put the
otherwise
Furby
this doesn't
in
work,
this
this
scene.
doesn't
Get
work?
the patents. Get
So no, it was actually like it was easy because we didn't even take into consideration the legal aspect of it. And in the
That's
beginning,
I love
wonderful.
that.
yeah, we were like, yeah, we're gonna do a Furby scene. Yeah, let's do a Furby scene. And then like there was one day that like in like after doing like the 5 different versions of the Furby scene, I asked Mike, we got permission to use this, right? And he was like, "Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah." And then we continued like working on the
Keep
thing.
going. Keep going.
Same thing with Photoshop, same thing with like because that I think that was our attitude, was to kind of be like, and I think the studio's also very like supportive of that, where it's like, oh, fucking go nuts. Like mention this song, mention do this, do that. There will come a time where a man will someone will come in and be like, you can't use that, or use that. But for now, let's try everything. And that was like Keita not allowing it to get in the way of the process of the story process. And so
So
just keep a list of everything
yeah,
you're referencing and just send it to us.
yeah. But then like but then I also had like we were super excited with the Furby scene. We showed it in the screening, and then eventually we realized that we were having difficulty trying to contact Hasbro, and it's like, oh, there might be a possibility that we can't use the Furby, and so we stopped using the Furby, and then multiple other versions like popped up as replacements, and the studio was like, they're all great, but they're not the Furby, and then we just continued pushing to get the Furby. And then one day I remember like having a meeting with the producer and I to talk to Hasbro about using the Furby, and they were like, yes. So they had mentioned like, oh, we can't like you can't blow up a Furby, but a Furby can't be on fire. And I'm like, okay, all
That's
right.
such a
this
specific
isn't
request.
bad, but this is okay.
Yeah, it's like you can't say you can't have them say let's kill these people, but you can let them say let the dark harvest begin. It was a balance, and then but the good thing was that we were able to get the Furby back.
So
That's so cool.
was it like how much leeway did your team in the story department have when you got the script? Like, did you work head on with the writers? So whenever, example, board artist would pitch a joke, like having that laser gun that would move people like video game at the pieces around. Would a writer write that and then you guys would board it, or if you guys came up with it, would you go back to the writers and change the script,
Yeah.
or was it more like a board driven thing?
It was very it was a mixture of everything, and I think it was because of the how open Mike and Jeff were in regards to
Hmm.
like messing with their script, because they were like moving so fast that they were like, by the way, like, if you come up with a better idea for this bit, by all means, like, it's more than welcome. And so
Put joke here.
yeah, no, like, so I told my story team, like, do what Mike says, do what's on the script, but also like be okay with, like, you know
Yeah, go crazy.
work faster, so that way you have enough time to put your other alts. And then a lot of, there was a lot of stuff that came from the board artists, and it was a very open, especially with me and Mike, it was very like a very open relationship. And so, like, he would be like, this is a very rough page, like he would just write it in the same day, like at 5 a.m. he would write it, and then at 10 a.m. I would look at it, I would thumbnail it and be like, this is what I think, this is what it is, however, this is what I think it should be in this part. And then it got to a point where, like, it really, that the movie really feels like it's done by multiple people. It's like, people always say it's a collaborative process. It is a collaborative process, but this one felt like it was a very collaborative thing where everyone got to say, and everyone has their own little thing. Like that, if I look at the, like, you guys see a movie, I see just endless duct tape placed on a bunch of, like, different scenes, and just art from different people, and it was just like, I yeah.
The movie, what I really love about the movie is that it was really a lot, there was a lot of fast pacing, and the comedic timing was just like on point. Like I remember the parts where they're going to these touristy sites, and
Mhm.
then they're like, let's go on a hiking trip, and then it just cuts
Yeah.
to a storm, and it's like, oh, let's get out of here. He belongs to the mountain now. I was
Yeah.
just like, oh my god. It's like I could see the board right there, like
I could, I
like
could,
because like when a board usually goes through a process where when the animators go in on it, and like some things might change and stuff, and it doesn't it doesn't have the same quippy like
Yeah.
delivery that you get on a board. Like when you see a board, it's the drawing. Yeah, it's rough. Even that makes it really funny, and it's something that I feel like the movie kept, and it was so cool. It was so quippy, so out there. Like it really made me laugh.
yeah, it felt a lot like the people that were steering certain scenes really knew what they were talking about. Like, I remember there were parts where it was just a very intimate thing between the dad and the daughter, or just Katie and her little brother. Like that got to me because it felt like a big sibling was drawing for their little sibling in the story, or vice versa. And it really felt like a lot of people chimed in their voices, but certain scenes really had those people that knew what they were trying to present for the
Yeah.
scene.
Yeah, it's interesting that Luis mentions that, because right now I was thinking that something that really caught my eye about this movie was that you can have really funny movies, and you can have kind of like sad or emotional movies. And yeah, like you can have movies that have comedy and they have like kind of very emotional moments. But I feel that usually it kind of tips one way or the other. It's either more dramatic or it's more funny. To be honest, when I thought about this movie, I thought it was gonna be more like on the funny side. I was expecting it to be really funny and entertaining, but I was not expecting the very deep emotional moments with like the relationship between Katie and her dad, and like even with like we said, with the Katie and the little brother, like there's these moments that are very, very, very impactful, emotional wise. And I think I'd like to know those scenes that carried a lot of emotion in them. Like, would you say that the storyboarding team had a lot of influence on that, or was that mostly just like you and Mike and like the heads that like were steering the direction with those very important scenes? Like, how much influence did the team have in general with those emotional moments?
Well, that's a good question. Good question. I think it was everyone. Like I honestly got like I think because from the very beginning, I think I'm happy. There's a couple of board artists in the production that are very like that are like good with comedy, but their thing is like subtlety and acting and emotional stuff, which is such a benefit. Because like me and Mike come from a very like aggressive, let's make everyone laugh and make the most stupidest movie we can possibly can. And I think we were having fun with it, but we started to like realize like, oh, there's a lot. Like for example, there's a lot of moments in the movie, uh, like that montage in the beginning where like they're going to like they're heading to the college and the whole like fucking mule thing. That was a way bigger scene. It was a way bigger scene and had like the weirdest stuff in there that made us laugh, but it was so detached from the characters that like the laughter will start in the beginning, but then trickle down because you're realizing, oh, as a person, subconsciously, I'm not investing in these characters, and so I think having these board artists that were like like Caitlin Van Arsdale, who's like a great board artist from our team, and Hannah Cho, who are like just like solid story people that were like, nah, I wanted to care more for Katie. But also it was like, it was like Phil and Chris who were very like, you know, there were moments in the movie where like where like I think we were just focusing too much on making it like Little Miss Sunshine, where there's like a really huge divide between everyone, and you just didn't want to be with these characters. Like you just felt like, oh my god, I hate them so much.
Yeah.
Especially Rick. Rick was such a douche, like he just hated. You're like, oh fuck this guy. So it was like, but then we were like trying to figure out how do we do it so that like it feels like they're having issues, but also at the same time that we want to root for them. And I think it was later in the production where we realized, oh, it's because there's a loss in translation. They're like, Katie's trying to do something good for the dad, but the dad is not paying attention. And then Rick is trying to do something good for Katie, but Katie is like it's not connecting. But the intention to connect those families there.
Connected.
And so, yeah, connected. Thank you, Luis. No, but that's yeah. I think I think it was everyone. And then when we started seeing the boards, like Hanacho was like, she used to like, we would give her a scene that would be emotional, and anything that made you go like cry in the movie, it was her. Like that was her.
She's responsible.
She has to pay my bill for therapy now.
Thank you, Anna.
That's actually such a good thing because I really feel like every storyboard team needs the funny guys and they need the sad people as well. Like there has to be a coexistence between these people because I would consider myself I'm a very funny, like I'm funny whack, let's go. Like I love over the off the wall type of funny.
Very punchy,
punchline, one-liners.
Yeah.
But then
for emotions.
Like I specifically try to work on subtlety because as a story artist, I want to be able to be subtle as well. And I'm like, how do you emote?
Yeah, like we didn't know how to like because Hanacho, and I say this in the most respectful way. She's very like kind of like quiet, like very like, hey, how's the guy doing? Like she will pitch the scene. She's like, and then this happens, and then this happens, and yeah, that's the scene. And we're all bawling. We're like just crying. Yeah. And she's very detached from the process, and we're like, that was beautiful. And she's like, oh yeah, thank you. Yeah, no, it was very.
That's so cool though.
No, but like you see her boards and like like she was the one that came up with the idea that like whenever Katie's nervous, she plays around with her strings of her hoodie, because that's like a little tick that some people get when they're like nervous. It's like just playing around with like their clothing or something, and it was just like it was the roughest drawing, but like you could see so much from it, and so I think she was super beneficial, and I think it made the movie so much better. And it was also literally a process of trial and error where like maybe let's try this as too much emotion, let's try this, okay, that's too much comedy. So it was us figuring out how to balance all those things, and then they stopped. I was like, all right, the movie has to go out. And then when people have been like, oh, it's a great balance, I'm like, well, shit. Like we were just working until the very end, and then we're happy people have like really responded to it,
I know you've worked on, other films and other shows as a board artist before. So you've probably had ideas like scrapped or scenes had to be reworked. But how hard was it as the head of story to manage, having to tell someone this scene is getting scrapped, or having been told by the director like, oh, we're changing this whole part. Like, word
We're
change is
cutting.
hard to go through. Oh, can you hear me?
Yeah. No, you're good.
If the word change is hard to go through, and if so, how was it handled in this production?
Well, I think if you came into the production and you and you were very, very protective of your stuff, then you would have not lasted that long, because like we changed all the time. And it was, I think, because me and Mike came from TV. So like we had a TV experience. So like we kind of like the quickness of it. Like
Yeah.
sometimes like feature takes a long time because it's like a slow process, and sometimes like you give a scene to someone and then they'll give it to you 2 or 3 weeks from now, and it's like, I like that we can be like, no, don't tie things down. Let's just keep it rough. And then we'll put in an editorial and see if it works. And if it doesn't work, then let's just throw it away. So one of the things that we try to do was just to make sure that like people were not tying things down too much. So that way when the loss happened, it wasn't such a painful loss.
Yeah.
And like I still remember there was one person in particular, she came from TV, immediately from TV, from Cartoon Network, and
Yeah.
I was I was telling her it's very tied down, make it rougher, and she's like absolutely, and then she did it, and it was still pretty clean, and I'm like, no, circle, other circle, dot dot, this is Rick,
Face.
and she was like absolutely, and then it took a while, and I'm like, sweet Jesus, but then she did it and she got it, and I was like, okay, perfect, that's great, you're doing great. And she's one of the best people ever, so
Glad to
but
know
it
that
was,
happens everywhere.
yeah, but even then, like even when we showed something and we looked at it and was like, oh my, this feels great. We showed it in a screening and it felt fantastic, and it's like it's gonna stay there. Something happens where a scene pops up that is very crucial, but for it to exist, this one has to die, and then that one leaves, and it's kind of like, and then we have to throw that away, and then we have so many scenes. Like I was talking to an executive who was saying like there's so many versions of this movie that eventually hopefully the world could see, and I'm like, well, we're trying in Twitter by showing like snippets of it, but yeah, I think by the end of the movie, I think everyone was just kind of like almost like, I don't want to say dead inside, but like they were just like, I know
Drained.
I know everything I bought is gonna disappear, like that was our attitude. But
Yeah.
yeah.
To me, it's like I've made 10 pitches and only 3 of them get approved. So that's cool. You know
Damn,
what
you
I
got
mean?
three approved? You
You got
got
three.
three?
Man, three,
You got
three is
three.
fucking great, man.
There's I pitched like 10 things. That was so cool. And one thing I wanted to ask is like it really struck my eye on him. Not only that sort of hybrid that you guys did with like 3D and 2D, but also like Katie's like artistic aesthetic. I just thought it was so cool. It's just so like bubblegum, like star galaxy, like stop motion hand puppets. So it was so fun. How did you guys come across like, oh, Katie's style is gonna be more like this and stuff?
That was Lindsay Olivares, the production designer. She kind of was the one that came up with the style for the movie. And I think, I don't know, I don't remember how it happened, but it was mentioned, the idea that like, what is the thing that's gonna make her stand out, like, or the movie stand out a little bit, and it's just that like she would have this sort of like, I think we saw someone do a piece of art that had like a little bit of Katie vision, how we called it, and we were like, that's it, that's 100% it. And so we try to like, Lindsay was trying to figure out how to like make it so that like it felt like the movie was from her point of view, and I think by having Katie Vision, it made her feel like it was her point of view, and it was just kind of like, it also had to be very not clean, it had to feel like,
Messy.
oh, messy, so that way you 100% believe that this is done by like a film student. Like if you look at if you look at there's a moment where like she's showing Aaron like the Manchi puking a pizza with
Yeah.
well, if the Manchi looks like he was cut from Photoshop in a very shitty way. And that was super important. So that way, like you kind of saw like, oh, there's something messy about it, but you can't really put your finger on it. Like it, and that was always key. And then like Katie Vision, we had like this particular there's a bunch of artists from Cal Arts who had like a particular style, and we brought them in to kind of add a flavor to like the Katie Vision because and yeah, and then but there was a point where like Katie Vision became too overwhelming, and we had it in every scene, and so like we had to like and back to trial and error. Like we just had to start taking stuff out.
Valid back, yeah.
And then I think it was later on that we'll figure out it's like, oh, Katie's the only one that has Katie Vision. This is her way of communicating. And then as the family starts getting closer and closer together, you start seeing that Linda has now Katie Vision. And by the end of the movie, spoiler alert, when they get to college, when she's talking to the mom, you see like little hearts or like some or little stars based on like little designs that like the mom has on her shirt. When she's talking to Aaron, like you see the Raptor badge, and like like you see the Raptor show up. And then when she's talking to Rick, you see little like when she's singing "Live Your Life" with Rick, you see that like Rick is like you started to see stars around him and then stars around her, and it's that it was so that visual subconscious way you would be like, oh, now she's including them in her family and in her world. So that was a kind of like a later discovery, and it was
Yeah, like a visual language. That's so cool.
yeah.
That is
And
so
like
cool.
and Aaron and her have it in the beginning when he goes Raptor Bash,
Raptor Bash.
he's got a little raptor, and it's because out of her in the family, he's the one that she's the most connected with, which was a huge deal. And I'm also happy with Mike that he decided to go that route, where I'm so sick of seeing like we're siblings, so we're gonna make fun of each other and like torment each other because we're siblings. I'm like, let's just watch siblings actually do care for each other, and like and because that's so sweet and special, and just to see that like he's her actor and everything that she does, and so that's why like he and her have their own little like Katie Vision.
They have their little love language. That I saw the movie at I saw the premiere at Paula's place, and I was wearing a mask. I was wearing this mask because the living room was full of people, and they didn't see it. But under this, I was weeping when I saw the little Raptor Bash, like lightning between them, because it's like that's so sweet.
It's like a sibling click. Only your sibling knows it.
That's the good thing about masks. Like you can really like enjoy a movie that's an emotional movie and just like have the mask all the way up to here, and it's like no, I'm not crying.
I'm fine.
You can just have it and be like, like weeping the whole time.
Oh my god, I just thought it's so cool that the whole Katie Vision aesthetic had such a contrast with the Tron like corporate building. And what was the name? It was Pal, right? The name of the villain.
Yeah.
When how did you guys come up with like, all right, so the CEO's phone is going to be the villain of this movie?
I think that was there from the very, very beginning. I think it was like a very what is the stupidest way of introducing what is the stupidest way to introduce AI as the villain? And I think that was the main that was there for the longest time. But like he was like, I think he was voiced by someone else. He was voiced by Mike for a long time, and then like when Olivia Colman showed up, it was kind of like oh, this is a no-brainer. But like Pal went through. It's interesting because like the goal, it was a balance of like how do we make it so this movie doesn't come across as like cell phones are bad, because that was not the goal. Like and so for a long time it was just like Pal being like, I'm going to send you to space, and that's it. And it was like, okay, so technology is bad. But then later on through writing, we found out that like, oh, this is not like a cell phone bad thing. It's like Pal is annoyed with Mark because there's like a father-daughter relationship there too,
Yeah.
Like she's like, wow, you're completely forgetting about me, Dad. And so like, I'm gonna like send everything you love away from the world. And that showed up later on because before that we actually had like Mark had a relationship with a guy called Ron, which was his stepdad. And in the presentation, in the Robot Brothers presentation, there was a there was a moment where like he's like, "We're here to change the world, and we're gonna save people's lives. Yeah, we're gonna like give employment to a bunch of people here at Pal Labs. Yeah, and I'm also gonna show Ron that I can be whatever I want to be. You hear me, Ron? I can be whatever I want to be." And Ron it that again, and the audience like, "You silly loser." Like it was like we had that relationship between the two
Oh my
that
god.
we liked a lot, but then it was kind of like, but when we realized like, oh no, let's give that relationship to Mark and Pal, it just made everything make sense, and it automatically made it so that like you understood why you were also watching this.
Oh,
And, you
yeah.
know, like you were like,
Yeah,
oh, oh, it's like we're seeing parallels between Rick and Katie with Mark and Pal. So, but yeah, it was fun. It was really cool to see. But in the very beginning, Mike wanted to have it so that like when you saw the humans, it was very imperfect and like lived in,
yeah.
and then when you saw the robots, it was the complete opposite of like just like super like Apple store, you know, like
Cybernetic.
clean and like to the point where it's a little bit too like intense.
The other day I was going to Walmart and they have like this like temperature scanner slash fuck, antibacterial thing, and it
Yeah.
looks exactly like one of the PAL robots. And I was like, oh, yeah.
Everything with a PAL chip is coming to life.
Yeah.
Well, that was the goal with like
Yeah.
sorry, that was the goal with the PAL robots too, was to kind of like make it so that like they felt like, yeah, Apple can actually probably do this, you know, like because we didn't want it to be too sci-fi. I mean, sci-fi was later on with like the stealth bots, but like at first you wanted to feel like it's just an upgrade of your cell phone. But yeah.
That's so cool. And another thing that I really wanted to ask, and what was like around the team, what were your favorite movies to like draw from? Because this movie picks up like this movie. It feels like it was made by movie geeks. Like there's so
Yeah.
much like you guys love movies, and like I feel like the movie was also saying like living your life like a movie. It's it's so cool. You know, Katie all the time she's like referencing something, or she's like, that is so Dawn of the Dead. And
Yeah,
Yeah.
like
like,
when
and you drive that home and you're like, yeah, we're in Dawn of the Dead. Let's go. Let's do this. You
Yeah.
know,
yeah,
what were your
I think
favorite movies to draw from for the movie?
well, I think, you know, I think Shaun of the Dead was definitely one of the big ones. Like
Oh,
you kind of see it in a way. Like we use a lot of Shaun of the Dead, like when like with the family's heading to Dino Stop. Like it's just like Shaun of the Dead has this thing where like you see like Sean and he's like trying to like get his girlfriend back, and but then at the same time in the background you're seeing like tanks and military stuff, and it's just like kind of like foreshadowing all the stuff that's gonna happen in the future later on. We want to do that when like Katie's like driving when they're driving and she's like kind of angry because like her dad decided to be like I'm canceling your plane ticket to college, and you're seeing like PAL trucks driving by, and like you're seeing her phone be updating. It's like just like kind of like doing all that stuff with like Shaun of the Dead. And yes, like you know, all the apocalypse movies, like we like Zombieland is like a good inspiration, like you know how to like
oh
how to
yeah,
treat
I saw that. I saw part of that too.
yeah, how to treat like the apocalypse in a funny way, you know, because that was you know that was a very huge thing because we're like in the very beginning it was like haunting, like that this looked like this movie was so scary, and we were like this is fun, and the studio was like we're not gonna make it if you make it this dark, and I'm like cool, so we just made it a little bit more funnier. Gremlins for the Furbies definitely was a huge one. um Tron, like there's the elements of Tron, like in the city, like it's just like there's a lot of things. And one of the movies that like that Mike wanted to do was he wanted this whole thing to feel like Lady Bird, you know. So like you know like just the idea of like what if Lady Bird like you know was dealing with a robot apocalypse, um and I think going back to Shaun of the Dead, what we liked about it was that the Shaun of the Dead was a story about a guy who's trying to get like not lose his girlfriend.
Mhm.
Oh, by the way, the zombie apocalypse is happening. Was the same thing we wanted to do with this one, where it was like you know this is a story about a dad and a daughter we're trying to just connect. And before she goes out to college, oh yeah, and the robot apocalypse happens.
It's like in the
We didn't
background.
want it to be like heavy robot apocalypse and then introduce the emotional stuff, because then it just would have been difficult. So which and which I like, because that means that you will sure 100% have a good emotional film, regardless of what the thing is. It's either robots or zombies or fucking like cannibal penguins. Who knows? I would watch it. I would watch the fuck out
The
of that.
cannibal penguin dystopia apocalypse
Yeah,
coming.
yeah. So yeah, so I think those were like a lot of our films. And then one of the films was Medium Cool, which is like this old 1970s movie where Mike loved it because it felt like it was just so like the way you place the camera around, like it made it feel like it was almost like a documentary in a way. And we were trying to do that as much as we could, where like moments where like it felt like a documentary in a way, but I don't know if it pulled it off, but but it was back there as an inspiration.
Yeah, I just think that's so cool. And you know, like what you said about it being a backdrop, such an interesting way to like go about with the story. And so one of the last questions that we had was like, which I think it was sort of answered already ish. It was like, you
Yeah.
as a story, how much freedom did you have while storyboarding with the writing group? How was that relationship with the writers?
It was great. It was we fed each other. Like it was like they would give me script pages, but then at the same time I would be like, they would try to figure out like we have no idea how the scene is gonna work out. Can you come up with us some ideas and brainstorm some ideas, and then we can introduce that to the script? And it was just it was a constant cycle of like of back and forth, which I thought made it a great experience, because we get to like like there's a lot of things that you have in order for you to understand them, you have to almost see them. So that's where I came in. Also, I was like, hey, what about this idea, about this joke? And they would like, and they loved it, and because I still remember like the butterfly formation was like a thing that like we didn't.
That was so it was so good.
Yeah, no, we didn't know what it was gonna be, and then for the longest time it was just like the Mitchells, like it just said that the Mitchells fuck up, and so we had the Mitchells fucking up, and it was in
Mitchell's
slow
fuck
mo-
up.
yeah, and then the Mitchells were like in slow motion walking, but then we're like clashing, and it was like cute, but it wasn't like funny. Like, we were like, "Ah, it's not still working," and then I think there was a moment of like a aha moment when me and Mike sat down and was like, well, I think they should be imitating the posies. I mean, they should be really imitating the posies, because like it's a family that's trying to imitate the perfect family, and they're not doing really well.
Family first.
Yeah, and that was the moment I was like, oh, but perfect. And then I mentioned to Mike, I was like, well, what about this idea of like a butterfly formation, where there's like this perfect organized thing that the posies do, and then the Mitchells immediately try to do it. And so we did that. We did the butterfly formation, and then after that, that grew into me going like, hey, so what if like right now you have that moment that like Mike came up with of like, I love you all so very much, and then they hug and then they do the butterfly formation. And then I told Mike, I'm like, what if the Mitchells literally try to do like, I love you all also very much, but it's really also like awkward. It's like I love you. I think you guys are all great. And then they try to do it. And so it just like the key was to make sure that those two things mirrored each other. And the only way this could have happened was because there was a constant, there was a collaboration between me and Mike, where it was like, I would inspire him, he would inspire me, and so on and so on. But yeah, it was a wonderful, it was one of the best relationships I've had in making a movie, just because we were all allowed to be creative.
That was so good. That Kill Bill mom scene. How did that came about? How did that came about?
So me and Mike were in Chipotle. There was a Chipotle next to the studio. I don't know if you guys know what Chipotle is, right? Chipotle is like a burrito.
The Mexican restaurant.
Yeah.
The Mexican restaurant. And then we were trying to figure out what to do with Linda there, because we wanted Linda to kind of have her hero moment. and he was saying like there should be a moment where she like just goes all out like old boy, like just kills them, and then I just grabbed like a napkin, and I just kind of like started thumbnailing what it was gonna be. And he was like, that might be a little bit. He told me he's like, this might be a little bit too crazy, and I'm like, we can't go back, man. We gotta do it. Like we just fucking try it and see what happens. And
What
so,
happens in Chipotle, like, is law.
You're a daredevil. Sorry.
what happens in Chipotle possibly will land in a movie in some way. Uh, but you know, so we thumbnail it out, and then I storyboarded it. And I was like, give me a chance. Let me show you what it could be. And then I kind of boarded it out. And then after I think he saw it, he was like, yeah, that's it. And so, but the thing is that the location changed a lot. Like it used to be not like the Robot City. It used to be Vegas, and it wasn't Vegas. It was somewhere else. But that acting of like of Linda like going like, it's my sweet boy, like it just like that always stayed for and I think
Heart ripping.
did it leave us? Did it leave us before? It was one of the three things that were there from the very beginning, and because I think it just like it worked. It's because there was a time where Linda, I think, was gonna be like a lot more sweeter, like Mike's mom. She's very calm, and we wanted the contrast to be like she just goes fucking apeshit. And then the fucking animation team just like plus it even more because they added like the blood splatter on her face, and I was like, this is great, this is fantastic. So it was a magical moment of collaboration that led to that glorious scene.
I love the life that there was this side by side with one of your boards with that scene, the Kill Bill scene, where they put your board with the animation side by side, and I love the jiggle that Linda does with the heart in her hand. Like, I am Linda Mitchell, mother of two, and just loses it. It's so like it feels so lived and raw.
Yeah, I had pitched him the idea that she rips the heart out, and Mike was like, "This is too crazy," and I'm like, "Let's try it. It's a cartoon movie.
It's a robot heart.
It's an animated movie." But yeah, I'm blown away by these people on Twitter who like immediately like I post something on with the boards and automatically they're like, here's a side by side comparison. I'm like, holy shit, that was what? How fast?
Yeah, the second you post it, people are like, thank you. This is mine
the
now.
editing power.
Yeah.
Oh god.
Like a lot of people.
Yeah, at this movie, like it really had that effect where I kind of asked myself, how are these things greenlit?
I asked myself that too.
It's a beautiful miracle, I guess. It's just the executive went like, just do your thing, and it was great. That's why I say it feels like a movie by artists for artists, because like I remember I was telling you Esteban this a couple of days ago that sometimes you can kind of feel when movies, especially animated movies, kind of have an agenda that it's like kind of like we want to make a movie because we want to market things out of it, like toys or merchandise, exactly. Yeah. And it kind of, sometimes you can make a really good movie out of that, but it kind of puts like a weight on the soul and the heart of the movie. So I really felt like this movie didn't have that in mind. Like sure, you could sell the Mitchell little toys, but you can bring back Furbies.
Yo, I want the robots as figures. Like I need those.
Yeah, we didn't do it with like any idea of like just we knew we were not gonna have any merchandise. But we wanted to make something that felt like that'd be kind of cool if they made some merchandise. But yeah, it was a very pure. It was one of those films that like, you just know it's really weird because like when I got to the studio, it was a different studio, and I think, and I'm not gonna say I think those movies have like a good have their own place, and I respect what they did. But there was a moment where I was like, we're making a fucking crazy ass Furby movie where like a mom is ripping hearts out. I don't know if this feels like it should be in the same studio that like Smurfs: The Lost Village is in. And so like, nothing against them. It's just that like, it was just like it was so dark, and I was like, I don't know if this is gonna work, but like I think this was like a miracle that this movie was made. I'm not gonna lie. But it was like, I think it was not only the fact that it was like we try to make it as funny as possible, That was our goal. It was to kind of make it so like if we had a screening, it's like let's make at least the funniest fucking screening we can make. And if we are rejected and not greenlit, then we went out swinging. But we at least were able to
We
say
tried.
we try to do it, man. It will be horrible if we don't do it. If we don't have the opportunity to do it. And then after that, like it, Phil and Chris, like one of our executive producers like left, and he was like the heart and soul of the movie, and we're like, oh no, what are we gonna
Come
do?
back.
Yeah, but then after that, he's like, like let me get in contact with Phil and Chris, and because they might like this movie, and then I think they, thankfully, were like pushing for it, and like there was this kind of like, yeah, I think this could be really good and really special, and we're like, well, hopefully they listen to you, and then Spider-Verse comes out, and it was kind of like, oh, we really got to listen to you guys, like, and that was the saving grace. I think those two coming into the project really helped it out, because if not, I have no idea. It made it easier for us to be able to make the movie. So
Yeah, there were times where I was watching the movie and then I saw some jokes or pitches and I was like, man, if I would have pitched this somewhere else, they would have just scrapped it. That looks really cool.
It's
Like
it,
it feels unhinged sometimes.
it's also
No
it's really
reins.
cool. It's really cool to see the voices that came out of, like you mentioned, like the studio was very different a decade ago versus how it is nowadays with the heads that are moving projects like these forward.
Mhm.
I'm a part of a couple animation discords, and it's just amazing to see how the discussion has gone around the movie. Like, usually when something comes out that's based on a property, you like, okay, I can compare it to what it comes from or what it's based on. But when a movie comes from the soul of an artist or a team that just like makes this hodgepodge project and comes out like this, like you have people observing it from all different walks of life and all these different perspectives, and there's discussions going on for days, like blocks of text about just this movie. And I feel that's super special, coming off the heels of the change that's happening in that studio specifically.
Yeah.
it's oh ahead. Yeah.
No, I was just gonna mention that I feel that Spider-Verse had a lot to do with that, because I feel like Spider-Verse kind of like opened the doors of like the possibilities, because other than you can see a lot of the influence, like the art and the lights and the colors in the Mitchells that you would see in the Spider-Verse, but it kind of, because Spider-Verse is another movie that you could feel that it was very art driven. So I think that the studio went like, well, this movie did great. It brought an Oscar to the studio. Like, I think it's a good idea to really just let artists be artists.
Go wild.
And it
Yeah.
gives me hope for the future. And I think it's like Sony, I guess, re-establishing or reinventing their brand, or how their animated movies are gonna look like from now on, and that's something great, because like they're kind of setting the standards like higher for themselves, because now people are gonna be like expecting like, yo,
Sony's
what's the
blowing
next
up.
thing you're gonna bring us? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's to be honest with you, it's like super mind blowing. All that's happening right now with like with Sony, and like and how I'm seeing like on Twitter people saying like, oh, it's happening. Like you're seeing like not a rebirth. I mean, a rebirth of Sony, yes, but like a studio that's like doing things a little bit differently. And it was it was,
Watch out,
and
Disney.
yeah, it is true. And Spider-Verse, I do think it had a lot to do with it, and but I could feel it in a lot of people that like like, oh, Spider-Verse was it a one-time thing, and then like after this movie came out, there was like, okay, now something is happening, and I'm excited because I just know of all the projects that are in development right now that do continue that conversation and that continue that thing, and I think the key
secret.
that we're trying to
You got stuff
The
cooking.
secrets.
You got
Yeah,
stuff
yeah.
cooking.
Yeah.
The pot.
There's so many secrets we can talk about, but but I think one thing what we're trying to do is to not have a house style, which is like like a lot of studios do have, and I'm like, I think what's gonna make us good is that we can do Spider-Verse and we can do Mitchells, but also we can do Hotel Transylvania, like 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 it could be like anything, and so like in the next ones that come out, like they're so different from each other, like so different, and hopefully the studio is seen as that studio of like like, oh shit, you guys are trying to like just have artists artist driven movies, and that's one of the big profits of this is Christine Belson, who's the president of the studio. like that whole crew of like her, Karen, and Katie Barron, and all these like I call them the matriarch of Sony, because like
Oh yeah.
um they're really pushing us, and they're pushing me with my next project, and it's just like, they're going like, can it be a little bit like more intense or more different, or like a little bit crazier, like, like, as long as it stays in a story, but it's super exciting to see people in social media not say like, man, this was a good movie, but be like, that movie is my soul, like, like that movie speaks to me. I was like, okay, wow, that was
That
not
movie
expected, but I'm so
made
happy that
me
it did.
tear up three
Yeah.
times.
Hey, I got a story. Like I was watching the movie at my house, and my brother was not watching the movie. He was doing his own thing. He comes in. I don't remember what scene he came in, but he came in late in the movie. Not 10 minutes passed, and he's already crying. And he hadn't been there from the beginning to like connect with these characters. Now he just walked in. I think it was the part where Linda is talking to Katie and kind of explaining her the whole thing about Rick,
Yeah.
Yeah, in
I
his
forgot the name.
cabin. Yeah.
And the cabin. Yeah, and I think it also resonated with my brother because he's all doing stuff like building stuff and whatnot. But
Yeah.
it's saying the power of how well made the storytelling is, that even if you just walked in and you're like, I remember his words were like, damn, I just walked into this movie and I'm already crying. I'm like, yeah, it's
The
great.
same thing happened to like my wife's dad, who just came to visit at the end of the movie.
Oh
Like, he
boy.
showed up at the end of the movie, and he saw Kitty dropped off in college, and he was sobbing. And I was like, you don't even know what the context behind this college is, and you're still crying.
It's like I don't
Like
care.
and it was just such a weird, like, you don't plan for these things, but like one thing you do expect is that like the universe in some way rewards you for the crazy hard amount of work and like just passion that you put into something. Like it's we we just wanted to make something fun, and the fact that people are responding to it so well, to hear, like, there was a clubhouse, we had this clubhouse like a panel, and then this girl like mentioned how like she was like, she watched the movie with her partner, and then she told her partner like, hey, you should talk to your dad, because they hadn't talked
Oh
in
boy.
years. And so like they talked, and then she she like went off to get food, and then came back, and when she came back, he was on the phone with talking to his father, and she's like, well, I wanted to thank you for doing that. And then we're like, oh yeah, wow, that's crazy, that's insane. And then Mike is like not heard, and we're like, hello, Mike. And then Mike is like, sorry, and he was just like sobbing, because like he was just like, I don't think, it's I don't even know I don't even know how to explain it. It's hard to describe
Like,
how.
As someone who's seen the movie with three different families, Paula's my own and my extended family. Um, I'll have you know that there's so many things that just are amazing to see the reactions of. Like, I remember there were the funny moments where like the dad doesn't know how to use a computer. Everyone's eye would go to the father in the room. And moments in moments where
Yeah,
it was like
my dad.
very heart wrenching,
My
very heart
dad.
wrenching scenes between brothers. You'd see my little brother came up to me, a man who has not hugged me in about a year. He was like super next to me throughout this whole part, and it was just so magical to see. And I can only imagine how it feels for you guys that did like were the ones who created this, seeing these reactions in your homes or people on the internet like going off about it. It must be magical.
It's bizarre. It's
It's
very
bizarre.
weird.
You're
Like
like,
like
we just wrote this. We just wrote a joke. We wrote a joke 3 years ago, and we just thought it'd be funny.
I drew
like
this guy falling on his face.
yeah, like, I mean, it's, like, you don't go and make a movie about like Furbies, like calling an elder to kill like a bunch of family. You never think, boy, this film is really gonna make people cry. But it's exciting. It's I'm super honored to be part of this project, and I'm happy that Mike believed in me enough to kind of like do this. And yeah, I don't know, it's like, my mom called me crying, like, and I was like, she still doesn't know what I do, but like she did call me crying. That's I think what matters.
I feel like
And
I
it
have to
just,
explain to my mom every time what I do. I'm like, I draw.
yeah.
Mom.
And what I like about what we didn't expect also is, I think Mike and we have a very specific taste for a specific sort of like American comedy, like very like there's a lot of like all of that Gravity Falls type humor and stuff like
I
that.
love it.
But we never expected for it to be like universally well received. Where like my friends of my uncle or my dad who are like who are not surrounded, have never seen Gravity Falls, are like, yeah, this is fucking hilarious, or like, oh, this is really funny. So it's just like really like seeing, yeah, this is the most I've ever talked positive about work that I've done. So I'm just I don't know what to say, but I'm just blown away
That's
by it.
awesome.
Speechless.
And I heard you're gonna be directing a new project now.
I am doing at this very moment. I am doing that. Yeah.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
That is so. I just think like if there were so many headlines for you as the head of story, or like imagine how it's gonna be. It's like, oh, the first Puerto Rican director in like Sony
Oh,
animation.
I mean, we'll see.
It's
We'll
gonna
see
blow
how
up. That's gonna.
we have to make the fucking thing first. It's like it's almost like, have you seen American Ninja Warrior?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is really what it feels like. It's like you go through an obstacle trying to push the movie, and you're like, yay, yay, and everyone's clapping for you, and you're like, yeah, yeah. And then there's the other 17 different obstacles, and one
Then
is
there's the wall.
the wall, and it's like, and it's that's what it feels like. So like right now, I'm in like one of the first ones where I'm like, yay, yeah, we have a good story.
We did it.
I'm really happy. Okay,
Praying to God you don't fall in the water.
And you're
Yeah.
like, oh, my back.
Godspeed.
But I think the key is to always believe that you're going to fall in the water, so that when you do fall in the water, it's not that big of a surprise. But yeah, no, it's. I'm right now working with someone who's like a, he's been like a huge inspiration for me, and like now we're both kind of like working on this thing together, and it's just been like
surreal.
It's been hard because it's like a very specifically. It's very different. That's what I can say. But it's very exciting. It's a good times, and I wish I could talk more about it, but we'll see. Yeah, and then
we will be following you for that.
The goal,
we'll be following your career.
Thanks. The key, the one thing I'm super happy about directing is that when people ask me what I do, it will be a simpler answer than like saying for the story, where they're like, "What? Like, isn't the director the head of story?" No, it's like a head of the department. So you're the head of the studio. I'm like, no, I'm not the head of the studio. It's just, like that's.
I always say that story artist is weird because you're not as skilled as a writer, but not, and then you don't draw as much where you're a concept artist. You're like in that sweet spot.
And then you try to explain it in
art and writing.
And then you try to explain it in Spanish, and it's like, oh, so you animador. Oh, so you animate people? No, I draw the thing, and I also paint it. But sometimes, yeah.
I draw
movies.
So I just keep it as like, yes, I do art, and they're like, okay,
Understandable. Have a nice day.
You are an artist.
Exactly. Just keep it simple.
All right. So my last question for you, Guillermo, is like, you as being a director right now, and this whole new obstacles that are coming, what advice would you give to like future story artists? Because I think all of us right here, like three of us, we really want to focus on being story artists as well. So what advice would you give to like the future of story artists?
There's multiple things I can say. I mean, I think one of the big ones is like be okay to fail. Yeah. And be completely okay to accept that your idea might not be the best idea, because I know a lot of, and I've met so many story people who are really good, but then they get too attached to their ideas, and it's kind of like, then you're not gonna get a job anywhere. So at least that I wouldn't have you in my team, because I like the people that I've worked with have always been like, like here's an idea. Well, it's not gonna work. How about this idea? How about this idea? So you have to be almost like treat it as like a disposable thing where like you don't get too attached to it, and be okay with, like, as we've said before, killing babies. And for someone who's listening to this, like, not actual babies but actual story babies, can
totally relate.
Yeah. But I think that, and it's a very difficult department to get into because it's so limited. It's like this like group of 5 or 6 people who are like there with the director. So it's like, and in my personal experience, it took me a while to get to that point. So like don't be discouraged if you don't like. You've heard this so many times, but like, don't be discouraged when you get the first rejection. Because I'm a faithful believer that like the harder you work, the luckier you get. So like if you work your butt off, eventually I feel like the universe is gonna like
Shift.
reward you. I'm saying the universe a lot, like I'm some sort of hippie. Like it's like the universe, man.
You're
You
our
give the
cosmic
universe,
father, Guillermo.
yeah. But I believe in it, and so I think that and watch a lot of movies that are not animated. That don't just watch a lot of live action films. Also go to a bar, and yes, you can go draw in the bar, but also hang out and talk in the bar. I used to go to drink and draws just to drink, just because I got more information from what I saw around me and from conversations, and that's what story artists are. Like you're a draftsman or an artist, but you're also storytellers, and like the best way to tell stories is by just seeing people around you, like
And
being
live.
truthful, and that's huge. That's super key. And yeah, and just whenever you're drawing boards, just focus on clarity and don't focus on rendering the most amazing looking shot ever,
Keep it
because
rough.
keep it rough. Yeah, just keep it rough, and then I think with all those things, I think you'll be fine.
That's so cool. That's so cool you said that, because like the way we've grown as story artists, like we work on several projects together, and it's like I'll come up with something like an idea. It's not even a story, it's like an idea. And like before I even like try to like get attached to it, I'll run it by Luis Esteban, and I'm like, I'll text him at like 2 a.m. I'm like, hear me out. Wrestlers in space. What do you think? Is
And
it
I'm
dope?
the only nut. I'm the only nut awake at 3 a.m. Like, yes, write it down.
Do it now. And it's like, and we keep them in the back burner, because then like sometimes the writers will be like, hey, remember that board you did like a year ago?
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, we really like that. Can you bring it back? And I'm like, yes, I have it right here. Here you go. It's happened,
That's another one I forgot to mention. That's like a super valuable one. Is what you just did. Like keep doing that. The idea of like doing something and then showing it to people that are gonna be honest with you. Like that's
Yeah.
super key. Like don't show it to your family, because they'll be like, "Oh, it's so cute, your little drawings. So that's adorable." But like, just show it to like people like your peers, and they'll probably be honest, and do that all the time, and you'll feel like you'll see the big change there. Because that's what we did. We would finish the movie, and Sony doesn't have to know this. It's a podcast that will. I mean, who cares?
I
Our
doubt
But
it.
10
we
for our
used to show it
for
to
our 10
everyone.
listeners.
Yeah, we would show it to everyone. Like we would just have like meetings where like we will have a screening, and then we will bring like Alex Hirsch, and then we will just talk to him, and then
Ooh.
he will brainstorm. We will just brainstorm ideas, and then voila. But I think getting it out there is really important, because I know a lot of productions that tend to be very like, I don't want to show my art piece. I'm like, oh fuck you, man. Like it's like just
Show it.
just show it, and that's I think showing it to people is what also made the movie be the movie that you guys enjoyed. So yeah, do that all the time.
So good. Whenever I try to like sit down, like you're gonna make a storyboard, like nothing comes up. But when like I'm thinking of a meme and I'm like, like Luis did something funny the other day, I want to make something funny. The board just like comes to me,
Yeah.
and I'm drawing. And I'm like, why can't this happen? When I'm like, you're gonna make a board for your portfolio. Let's do this. And it's like, no, nothing's coming.
Well,
Yeah,
yeah.
when go ahead.
Oh no, I was just gonna say like just like take those moments of like, oh, that funny thing that Luis did, and just save it and just make him and have him there, and then when you're doing the portfolio, you just pick from all those things that you like found funny in their life, and then add them. Because I know that feeling where it's like, I don't, what the fuck am I gonna talk about? Yeah. You were
I
gonna
don't
say
do profound.
Yeah, I was gonna say that whenever I have a board, I'm like, okay, I want to see if it can actually make someone cry. I'm like, hey, Paula, check this out at like 8 o'clock at night, and she's like, okay, sure. And then her reaction
Are
lets
you
me know,
these?
hey, yeah, her reaction lets me know, hey, can I tune it back? Can I push it further? Should I stab you harder and then twist the knife? Like, how can I direct this? And asking for feedback is always good. So we're showing this to the team tomorrow.
yeah,
So
no, yeah,
good.
please do. No, because Mike used to there's a book called okay, it was Raging Bulls and like Easy Riders or something like that. I think it's a book that like Mike Brianda used to love, where the editor from from Star Wars was like constantly. She's like, if people, when Han Solo shows up, if people are not losing their shit, then we're failed. We have failed as filmmakers. And so she would try to like edit nonstop that scene until the moment that it was shot on the screen and people were like screaming. That's the goal. And I think that was like kind of our North Star is to always like strive for that, like, and do the same thing when it's like, hey, are you crying, are you laughing, not yet, okay, what can I do to push it even more, like, so it's a good thing to do. So I think you guys are on the right track.
You were looking at your
Yeah.
phone when I showed this joke. Look at it again.
Yeah.
Hold them hostage and be like, hey, so this is my board, and you just like PowerPoint presentation it.
Oh yeah, we have like a warehouse in here in Culver City where we kidnap people, and we're like, okay, so we're gonna show you this, like the board first drafts of Act 1 of Mitchell's versus the Machines.
Yeah.
Let us know what you think. Here's some food. Don't do anything, or we'll hunt you down.
It's not.
Yeah, Luis has us in a dungeon at all times for this podcast.
It's
He
not.
just shoves us in a dungeon, no food.
You guys will be okay then. I think you guys will have a future in storyboarding.
It's not even a clip. It's like a PDF file, and you're like clicking. next.
Oh, 100%.
This is
yeah.
Awesome.
Well, I think we're good here. We're just gonna be wrapping it up here. This is really awesome. We got so much like intel. This is really it's a nurturing experience to talk about this, especially someone who's like in there, like in the industry right now, and it's really cool. It's really inspiring. It's really motivating, and we just hope that we us as artists get to grow, get to work on projects. Who knows? Maybe we might work in the future. Like
that will be
it
my
could
dream.
happen. It'll be
That will be my dream to actually, yeah, because like right now I feel like I'm literally the only Puerto Rican in the goddamn. Well, there's another Puerto.
You're the Latino
Imagine this.
token.
Imagine this.
It's
Imagine
Latino,
this.
Latino.
10 years from now, Guillermo puts the gauntlet on. He puts the stone, and it's every Boricua artist ever just flies, starts levitating.
Well, then I burned off my arm doing it, but it was worth it.
And they're all there with mofongo and adobo, and they're just like, oh, come on.
White people be like, oh, I know a Latino person, and then point at Guillermo. He's right there.
Oh man,
that's so cool, man.
Oh.
So, anything else you'd wanna say before we leave?
If you haven't seen, I've never done plugs before, so this
movie
is
recommendations from
movie recommendations.
Drop it.
Name
so
drop.
there's this movie in Netflix called Mitchell's versus the Machines, and it's a very fun film. If you like Furbies, and if you like families, and if you like
Apocalypse.
if you like apocalypse, if you believe that the end of times is near, this movie is for you.
If you didn't watch Tron, but you really like that vibe, well, this movie's for you as well.
I can't wait to get tweets from the Furby fandom about this. It's like, dude, this movie's great.
Yeah.
You guys are gonna bring Furbies back, okay?
Or they'll be insulted by how our portrayal of Furbies in the movie. Like they'll be like, no, my Furby is not like this.
How did you know about the cult? Like, they just send it.
How do you know about the cult? But I think, yeah, and then also like if you're more curious about like about the movie, like I know that like tomorrow I'm doing a talk for Enfoque, or sorry, not Enfoque, but like what used to be Enfoque.
Yeah.
Puerto Rico Film Festival, and then after that I'm doing a talk in for View Conference, which is like Italy's biggest animation festival, and that one will have me, that will have Lindsay, that will have Mike, Jeff, Alan Hawkins, who's like the head of animation, and then Mike Lasker, who's like the head of VFX, and then we'll be showing a lot of like clips and stuff like that from the movie and processes. If you're into this sort of stuff, and that one is. I don't remember the actual date. Let me check really quickly. I think it's this Friday. Yeah, it's this Friday.
This Friday, May 14th.
And it's gonna be free. Right now, apparently, there's like 2,000 people have already like registered for it, which is great.
That's cool.
And then later on, I'm doing like a talk for the Los Angeles International Film Festival.
Live.
Live. And it will be part of the Cafecito with Sony Pictures Animation. where it'll be me, Lindsay Olivares, and Phil Lord, and we're gonna be talking about like what is it like to be Latinos working in the animation industry. Yeah, and so there's a bunch of other stuff, and I think by that point or before that, you're probably gonna be like, I'm sick of this dude. So you can do whatever you want to do, but like let's know that like there's more stuff. Talk about the film, and then in regards to my film, I can't say anything. And what else?
So that it's gonna be awesome.
I said that it's gonna be awesome. Yeah, so it's hopefully we don't know, but yeah, that's basically that's my plugs.
Damn, you're going on
Alright.
a movie tour. That's awesome.
Yeah,
In 10 years, when we all have robot arms and like cyber eyes, we'll be here to talk about your movie.
yeah, well, very much so. When I'm a head in a jar, I'll be,
Yeah.
yeah,
Like tipo Futurama.
yeah.
We're gonna keep
Guillermo
Guillermo alive in
2077.
a jar.
Guillermo 2077.
All right, well, we're gonna be wrapping it up here. Guillermo, thank you so much for being on our first interview. This is really awesome.
Muchas
And be
gracias.
sure to check us out on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. Draw me a story. It's awesome. Peace
Yeah.
out.
Thank
Peace out.
you.
Yeah, bye.